Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for our fifth session of the day, focused on closing tactics and renewals. I am again super excited about being joined by two good friends. We've all been in the sales tech and sales space for many years and have been able to see how things have evolved over the last couple of years, particularly the last year to 6 months. Let's take a quick second to kind of go around the horn. Scott, if you can take a quick second and introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're up to these days.
Yeah, sure. Hey, everyone. Pumped to be here. Scott Britton, co-founder of Troops.ai. I head up the growth function there, which is basically sales and marketing and supporting those teams. And for those of you that aren't familiar with our business, we make it really, really easy to interact with your customer data by connecting all the back-end business systems that you have, like a Salesforce, a Zendesk, a HubSpot, to where people are spending time, which is messaging interfaces. And so if you use those systems and you want to make sure the right people are seeing and actioning the right information at the right time, that's what we do for some of the fastest growing companies in the world. And yeah, renewals and getting deals in before the end of the year is pretty much all I think about right now. So this is a very timely topic.
Awesome. Yeah. And, just as a reminder, if anyone has any questions, go ahead and click on the Ask a Question button here at the bottom, and we'll go ahead and have our panelists answer your questions. Jake, my man in Austin now, I know you're loving it down there. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, your awesome long career and as a sales guru. I see you on LinkedIn every time I go to LinkedIn, I see a video.
Can't escape me, George. You can't escape me.
I can't.
Yeah, well, look, my man Scott's in Austin too. We actually went, ironically, Scott and I went golfing yesterday. So Scott and I spent a lot of time together in the last 24 hours. I haven't seen the guy in like a year and a half, and he like a lot of New Yorkers decided to come on down to Austin to soak it up. So Scott and I have been hanging out a lot lately, so this is good. So I'm Jake Dunlap. I'm the CEO of Skaled Consulting. I've been a sales leader for quite some time. I started Skaled almost a little over 7 years ago now. What we do is we come in and support senior executives and sales leaders with strategic and tactical initiatives. So we do a lot of work around with early stage companies, interim leadership, interim sales ops, interim sales enablement, and then for a lot of larger organizations, we are, kind of a modern, think of the most modern methodologies, processes around outbound and, kind of customizing methodology to your business is really where we come in. So we work with both big companies, large, Fortune 100s, and we work with rapid growth startups, helping to build out more replicability or innovate on a current sales challenge. So looking forward to the conversation.
Gotcha. Jake, let's talk a little bit about closing. And, it's interesting because people right now are having such a difficult time understanding how to prioritize. Number one, like prioritize their pipeline, right?
Yeah.
Like what does a 75 to 90% deal look like today? What are those attributes? What advice would you give folks around in COVID times? And we know we're not going to get out of this anytime soon, right? We got to really be able to understand how the market is changing and know when something is BS or if it's a real rejection that's coming because the market is really suffering.
Yeah, well, look, I don't know. I've got really boring answers around closing, in particularly usually, which means for me, what the things that aren't different, I'll maybe start there, is that it really all goes down to the discovery process. That if you don't ask the tough questions early on about, hey, who else needs to be involved, right? And that is a really, really big one right now. That now, look, we've already had that trend, right? More and more buyers getting involved, more and more people's opinions. But now everything has to get rubber stamped by like 19 people. And I'm going to tell you, if you're one of those sellers who is used to selling through a champion and, hey, Johnny Smith, you're done, right? And so I think the ability to be able to speak executive language and understand executive priorities and really be able to be that quarterback of the deal, to understand who needs to be involved, to get the rest of the people. I feel like COVID has made that and will continue to make that even more necessary. But it really all to me is about the discovery. It all starts there, and be able to ask those questions, know who's involved, drive the pace and drive the momentum. And so that for me, I would say is actually maybe that's a little bit of both. And I've got some other thoughts about it, because to me, closing it's an outcome of a well-executed process. Right. I've gotten in battles with sales leaders who tried to hire us. Jake, we have a closing problem. I'm like, okay, so you have a discovery problem. No, Jake, we just need to close. I go, well, I can't close if I don't have the information. And so right now, end of the year, COVID, you got to go back and look at your deals and just say, hey, did I go deep in discovery? Maybe you go back and you do a little bit of retread. So those are some of the things that I'd be thinking about right now, are those two big ones.
And so are we saying that COVID has created a world where now account plans are more important than ever, understanding who has to touch a deal more important than ever, and that essentially it's going to take more stakeholders being involved in a deal to get deals done?
100. Yep, that's exactly right.
Got it. Scott, what's your take on this, and what have you been seeing? You're deep into it right now.
I'd echo what Jake says. I mean, the CFO has scrutiny on every single deal at most meaningful size companies, and so we always talk about at Troops, like in terms of like what's going to close. Like sales the forecast in sales is an essay test. It's not a multiple choice test. Doesn't matter if you like have a close date at the end of the year and your person says they're going to buy it. You really need to understand, like, do you know who the economic buyer is? What is their process for evaluating, for making a decision or not? When are they going to have the conversation? What's the paperwork process? We use MedPick, so it's just part of our process to learn these things and ask these questions. And for a lot of people that aren't familiar with it, it can be a little awkward, to test people. But if you want to know whether the deal's going to close or not, you need to be able to ask things like, okay, what is the last piece of software you bought? How did that happen? How did it go? How long did it take? Are you going to sign, or is the CFO going to sign? Okay, what is the process for you putting this in front of the CFO? Have they ever said no to something? Why or why not did that happen? And so long as you make it like it's important, because people can be defensive when you talk to them like this. Really, how you say it is important. And so making sure that you're on the same side of the table as them is the adjective where it's like, hey, we've identified that we can really move the needle here in your business. And so I just want to make this figure out how we can work together to set yourself up for 2021. And so, walk me through like what you think you're going to need to do, because I want to be a resource here to make it as easy as possible. That's a very different tonality to getting information than the classic. It's like, so you sign, that's just going to challenge someone's, just self-worth and authority. And so I think it's very, very important how you ask these questions to get these answers to know whether you actually have a deal or not.
So a little more EQ, less challenger sale.
I just think it's, hey, you're on the same team. Like if you genuinely believe that you're going to help someone grow their business, then we are aligned, and I'm going to be your partner to get this done versus, asking you questions in such a way that more feels like I'm trying to suss out that you don't have power or not, if that makes sense.
Yeah, got it. Well, we got a question that came in from Dakota Barron. Go ahead and read that out. What are some mistakes that can be made in the closing phase that might cost you the deal, even when discovery and other early stage pipeline processes are executed properly? I know it's a big sort of broad question, but Jake, any sort of easy ones, low hanging fruit that come to mind?
I mean, I'll try, but again, I guarantee that like 89.9 to 95% of the issues with closing for quota Baron are due to discovery. So I'll caveat that almost every deal I've ever lost, I can go back and I didn't ask this question. I didn't ask that question. I got soft and didn't ask the follow-up, and I got happy. So that would be one thing. So I'll caveat that. So, but what can you do at the very, very end? I think one thing Scott said I think is great is I think too many salespeople are scared to have a very realistic conversation with someone to say, look, hey, here's where we're at in the process. Is this where you're at too? How are we feeling about this? And making sure that you're actually aligned versus assuming. And I think that takes a certain level of, and again, I would encourage all of you to do this in all of your deals. If you've got deals that are starting to go silent or dark, just have that conversation. Hey, John, look, I want to catch up. We've invested a lot of time together over the last month and a half. I just want to make sure that we're aligned on what the plan is to go forward. So I think you got to have that kind of, reckoning meeting or have that conversation with them. The other thing, and this is probably, I think, an even more actionable one is too many people, their sales process stops at, they don't talk about the implementation. And what they don't realize is that you lose more deals to the status quo, which is nothing, which is no decision, versus competition. And so what happens is, imagine if I'm on the other end, because I, as a buyer, what do I care about? I care about using the product. So if your buyer journey and how you talk doesn't walk me through in a very detailed way the implementation process, you lose way more deals than you could ever imagine. That if you're one of those people, and for all my software sellers who's like, oh yeah, no, it's really great. Our customer success team is world-class and they're going to help to integrate you and blah, blah, blah. And you kind of sweep it under the rug as opposed to talking about what's actually going to go into it. So like, look, when you buy Troops, here are the next 6 things that are going to happen. We're going to set up the implementation call. Then we're going to have this training. Then my team's going to do all the work, Nancy. We'll take care of coordinating. We're going to quarterback it for you, etc. And I think if you want to close more deals, you've got to make them feel comfortable with what happens after the signature. Because what happens on the other end is they go in a room that you're not a part of, and they say, who's going to execute this? Who's going to implement this? And they go, yeah, and that's when you get that objection. Oh, yeah, this is really great, George. But we've got a few priorities. Can we catch back up mid Q1? And that's because someone in that room said, we don't have time or priorities for this. So talk about the implementation. Don't be scared of it.
Got it. Scott, what's your take on this?
To me, I see a lot of deals. I agree with Jake. Like fundamentally, it's discovery and asking the right questions is going to know where you stand. But where I do see what a lot of people are probably thinking about is like, how do I get this in before the end of the year? And for me, I've seen a lot of deals slip due to the paperwork process. And so getting really, really clear on that. And then even asking questions because it's the holidays, like, okay, so-and-so needs to be the final sign-off for a person. Like, do you know if they're, like, a lot of people are on vacation right now. Like, do we know their availability? Like, I know things can take longer than usual right now. These are important questions to ask because I've seen it time and time again where you're lining up, you're tracking, you're working against a compelling data or event, and then that pushes because of someone's unavailability to get looped into the process. And so just getting really, really clear on once you have all the people that are involved in the process, when they're going to get looped in, making sure they're not going away, making sure that they know that they already know about this, and that this conversation is in flight, I think is really, really important.
Gotcha. So this kind of mapping back to how we opened this, which was making sure that you are in contact, aware of all these stakeholders that you have to involve in the deal, or you can really miss that key element and lose a deal or drag it on. So I can start to see sort of the correlation here. No problem, Dakota. Thank you for your question. We talk about the sort of the evaluation stage, and and Jake, you said most of the deal is lost at that evaluation stage. Any sort of frameworks that you really love? Any key questions that you think every sort of evaluation phase or stage has to have? Of course, everything is relative, but are there any fundamental questions that if you don't have, it's you're really just missing a basic.
Yeah, I get the question, and I would say it's more of like more strategies. Meaning, but I will say in the discovery process, where people usually go sideways, is they get too tactical too quick, because they know what their product solves for. So that they might say like, "Hey, what are you doing for integrations between your communication systems now?" And if I'm a SVP of sales, what you just said is priority number 98 to me. Instead, I'm trying to understand, how do I make my team 7% more productive? And so I think sometimes people, instead of talking about top priorities, big picture, they get tactical too quick, and that immediately makes your solution. I was having this exact conversation actually this morning. Yes, we do a lot of playbook work, and I've got a salesperson on our team, and he's like, yeah, and this is going to help you to get everyone on the same page and systematize that, which intuitively you're like, yeah, that's helpful. But instead, what does a sales playbook actually do? Well, sales playbook, you have a ramp problem, which is what you mentioned earlier, that your team is ramping in 5 months instead of 3. What's their quota? 40K. You're hiring 10 new people. That's $640,000 that you're going to lose next year. Done. That's what a playbook's worth. So I feel like that what they don't do is really understand what their product solves for. And then the last thing that I'll mention that I think is a must, but that is a big one, is that you don't make what you do a big enough deal. You get real tactical with it. And then the second one is that, and I'm going to talk this more like mid-market deals and enterprise, you have to be the project manager. You can't just sit there and wait. You've got to, and when you get that first meeting with a lot of stakeholders, you have to set the tone. You have to run your agenda. One of the biggest pieces of success or advice we give is more meetings actually leads to faster deals. Because if I can control the meeting pace and I can go meet with IT and then marketing and this person, I can do that all in a week, versus thinking that a company internally is going to be able to coordinate really effectively, which rarely happens. So I think that would be my other piece of advice, is that in that evaluation phase, expect that you need to go be the one who sets the meeting up with IT to talk to them about integrations, marketing to talk about impact on brand, etc. So those are my big two.
Awesome. I love that. And really being able to leverage, when you reach out to that IT person, say, we've been meeting with, Susie and Sarah in marketing, and they mentioned you're the person to speak to about integration, and being able to do that. So as a tactical thing of how to use what I call in my training names, right, to really be able to drive that. Scott, what's your take? And we got about 2 minutes left, and so we'd love to get your take on this. And then we got a question to answer from the audience as well.
I think making sure that you go horizontal in the process is a great point, like Jake brought up. My opinion, especially during COVID and just the modern buying process for many solutions, are that people want to try before they buy. That's just, at least in what we do and where we sell, like that just feels like, especially I guess in more like emergent products. And if you have a product where people want to try before you buy, it's really, really important to have evaluation criteria, XYZ metric we're going to influence. We have the report set up. Here's the baseline. Here's how we're going to measure it. But it's also, and this is one that I've seen blow up some deals. It's also important, how important is it for the people on your team, if you're selling a product that individuals use, that they like it? Because I've seen a number of deals where we have beaten metrics for evaluation that was the quote unquote decision criteria, but there were two detractors for whatever reason in the test group, and then that blew up a deal. And so you need to just get real clear up front, like how important user feedback is in your evaluation period, because if it is, you're going to want to make sure that you work with those people in any type of try before they buy scenario and have a pulse on what people are saying. That also gives you a lot of information to bring back to the stakeholder when you make the case that, look at all this awesome feedback we've gotten. And you can kind of turn people as you need in the process. But it also, you can also challenge in that scenario and just set expectations that, hey, you know what? Your job isn't to make everybody super happy. Your job is to drive bottom line results for your business. And I just want to make sure that we're on the same page about that. Because, and I know that XYZ, everybody has their own way of working, and that might not be reflective of what you, as someone who's responsible for selection of these products, you guys might have a different opinion. And so to me, that's maybe like something that not a lot of people think about, but I think is really important for any type of eval process that involves product usage.
Awesome. Well, folks, we have one question that came in. Any thoughts or tools on automated closing tactics? And I'm guessing what Ryan is asking here is any tools that could perhaps give us some clues that that this prospect has a higher propensity to close. That's the way I'm interpreting the question. Thank you, Ryan. And maybe we'll go ahead and wrap up with that. Jake, any kind of I guess data points, clues?
Yeah, there's a bunch. I mean, there could be what he's talking about is like some like lookalike or intent modeling stuff. But I would actually say, so there's a tool actually that we're getting ready to start implementing with our clients called Recapped, RECAPPED. I think it's .io. And basically what it does is takes the mutual account plan or the joint account plan and puts it into a collaborative environment. We really feel that that's the future of sales. We feel that the future of sales is going to be 100% transparent. It's going to break down the BS where salespeople do this and where buyers are, let me hold my cards because the salesperson's holding their cards. So Recapped is a tool that allows the buyer and the seller to both like kind of store all the information about what's happening in the deal, the decks, and allow them to collaborate on like verify, hey, because think about a forecast. A sales forecast to me is insane. It is 100% based on one person's opinion on conversations. No buyer is checking a box saying, yep, I agree, Scott. That's where we are in the process. That is insane to me in 2020 that a sales forecast is totally made up of one sales rep's interpretation of information that they gathered. And so Recapped is the one that we've been big on.
That's awesome. Scott, anything that comes to mind?
In terms of automated closing, no. It's sales and business is human. What I have seen done really well is companies leverage sales engagement technology to do things like at a certain stage automate like getting executives involved. And so it's a play, right? Where it's like, hey, we move a deal to like stage 3, stage 4, like we're going to let, people use Troops for this. Like we're going to let the CEO know that he needs to get involved. And here's a templated email that he says to their executive. And now all of a sudden the conversation's elevated. And so I've seen a lot of things like that just help accelerate and or improve the winning percentage of deals. And Jake probably knows more about that than I do because his company, I found out yesterday, has implemented more sales engagement, done more sales engagement implementations than anybody else in the world, when you think about tools like Outreach and SalesLoft. So that's kind of some of the cool things that I've seen in ZoomInfo does that really well as a company.
Awesome. Well, folks, thank you so much, Jake and Scott, for taking your time. Two very busy executives. So you volunteering your time is definitely means a lot. So hopefully this all has been helpful for folks out there. If maybe you can post in a link to your LinkedIn in case folks want to connect with you or ask you any questions moving forward, or want to learn more about your services. And for everyone else in the audience, we're going to go ahead and move to session 6. So you can go ahead and click on the schedule at the top here and select session 6, and we'll go ahead and get that started here in a little bit. But Jake, love you. Scott, love you, man.
Thanks, man.
Take care.
Thanks.
Jason Vargas now is in Austin too.
He's
Everyone's
here.
in Austin.
Oh,
Max is here.
get on the bandwagon. Everybody
I'm going to be there sooner than later. Happy holidays, everyone.
All right, man. We'll see you.
All right.
Bye. Take care.